In Ravenhurst, there are certain rules best followed, else you risk learning why they were set in the first place. This is the tale of Beth and the little door in the closet. Let's begin. She arrived in the village on an October afternoon, the kind of day when the sea and sky blurred into the same dull pewter grey. Beth was a quiet girl, reserved, awkward, and newly orphaned at 23. The car accident that had taken her parents over the summer had hollowed her out, leaving behind something that still moved, still spoke, but no longer felt whole. She had come here because she could no longer stand the silence of her flat in London, the way it echoed with everything that used to be there. The cottage she rented was small and whitewashed, perched along a narrow cliff path overlooking restless water. It felt distant from everything, as though it had slipped slightly out of the world and settled somewhere just beside it. It wasn't spectacular, but it was the kind of place one retreated from the world. Its owner, Millie, was an elderly widow who lived in the adjoining house, but it had been her son, Reginald, who handled everything. He had written to Beth for weeks, brief, polite messages arranging the rental, always signed neatly, R. Whitaker. He had told her to meet his mother at the gate. Millie stood waiting when she arrived, wrapped in a knit shawl the colour of dried lavender. She smelled faintly of roses and thyme. Up close, Beth noticed something unsettling. Millie did not speak, not even a greeting. Instead, she handed Beth a folded note, written in a trembling, uneven hand. "Make yourself at home. Knock on Mother's door if you need anything. P.S. Do not open the small door in the closet. Signed, Reginald." Somewhere overhead, a raven called. Beth glanced up instinctively. When she looked back, Millie was still smiling, but her eyes had not changed. They remained fixed, watchful, unblinking. It gave Beth an eerie, fleeting unease, but she ignored it. Surely she was imagining things. The first few days passed quietly. At night, the sea hurled itself against the rocks below, a steady rhythm that should have been soothing. In the late evenings, Beth sometimes thought she saw Millie standing at the edge of the shoreline, unmoving, facing the water as though waiting for something to return. The villagers spoke of her in passing. Kind enough, they said. Lost her voice years ago due to illness. A little strange, but keeps to herself. Beth accepted that easily. Strange felt harmless compared to everything else she had endured. Still, the cottage held a feeling she could not quite name, and at night it deepened. Sometimes, as she lay in bed, she thought she heard her name, soft, familiar, drifting through the house as though spoken by someone who knew her well. She told herself it was grief. Grief had a way of reshaping ordinary things into something else. The small door in the closet became harder to ignore. It sat low against the wall, half hidden behind hanging coats, large enough to crawl through. The paint ran over the edges, thick and uneven, as though someone had painted over it hundreds of times. Why had Reginald given her explicit instruction not to open it? More than once, Beth found herself kneeling in front of it, staring, wondering. She desperately wanted to ask about it, but she dare not be impolite. She was one that followed rules, so she left it alone. Lindsay, her only friend, arrived that weekend, bringing with her a sense of familiarity that the village itself did not offer. She had always been the opposite of Beth in every way, sharp, outspoken, and unafraid to say what she thought. Where Beth hesitated, Lindsay moved forward without question, and for a time, her presence made the cottage feel ordinary, more familiar. They walked the cliff path together, Lindsay talking easily, laughing at old memories while Beth listened, responding where she could, though her thoughts were often elsewhere. That night, as they sat by the fire, Lindsay's gaze drifted toward the bedroom door. "Come on," she said suddenly. "Let's open it." Beth stiffened. "No, they asked me not to." Lindsay scoffed, lowering her voice. "That old woman gives me the creeps." Beth said nothing. Then Lindsay leaned closer, her tone half joking, half serious. "What if she's hiding something in there? Something not alive anymore?" Beth forced a laugh, thin and unfeeling, and she changed the subject. But the thought lingered. When Lindsay went back home, Beth's curiosity grew. One night, around 3 a.m., she woke to the sound of gentle knocking from inside the closet. 2 soft taps, then silence, then 2 more, repeating, like a heartbeat. Unable to resist, she knelt down in front of the closet, staring at the little door. Her hand hovered over the latch. She thought of her mother's last voicemail, the one she still couldn't bring herself to delete. She thought of how invisible she had always felt, even before the accident, and how easy it would be to just disappear. Then the knocking stopped, as though whatever waited behind the door had heard her thoughts and understood. Beth swallowed. Then slowly, she opened it and crawled inside. The space beyond was not a cupboard. A cold mist rolled outward, curling around her and fogging her vision. She stood, and the little door behind her closed with a click. Beyond it lay a narrow dirt path under a bright, full moon. The sea stretched endlessly beside it, but something was wrong. The shoreline curved the wrong way, as if she was in a mirrored version of the village. She followed the path until she saw it. A cottage, perched along the cliffside, identical to the one she had just left. Fascinated, she hurried to the cottage. A single candle burned inside. She raised her hand to knock upon the door, but it swung open before she could touch it. Inside, she could see a figure standing, as if waiting for her. It was Millie. Beth gasped, but before she could speak, Millie raised a bony hand and blew a fine dust of dark green powder into her face. The world slipped quietly into darkness. When she woke, she found she was tied to a chair. Then came the pain. It spread from her neck in a sharp, burning line, as though she had been recently cut. Her body felt wrong, frail and unfamiliar. And even the simple act of breathing seemed to require more effort than it should. She noticed sigils and a circle of black roses on the floor. A small bone knife and a bowl of dark red liquid rested on the table beside her. The fear grew like a fire in her gut, slow and consuming, until her whole body began to shake. She looked down at her bound hands. They were not her hands. They were thin, wrinkled, marked with age, and they ached with what she guessed must be arthritis. The sound of clothing ruffling drew her attention to the figure in the corner. The figure stood before the mirror, adjusting her dress with quiet satisfaction. When the figure turned, Beth felt something inside her give way. Beth was looking at herself, at her own face, her own body, standing there looking back at her as though it was natural. A chill went down her spine as realization dawned. "I have to thank you, dear," the girl said gently, her voice light yet familiar in a way that made Beth recoil. "I've waited a very long time for someone to open that door." Terrified, Beth tried to scream, but the silence held. She had no voice. Millie leaned in close and gently pinned Beth's arms down. Beth struggled against her grip, but she was too feeble to move even an inch. Millie smiled with dead eyes, wearing Beth's body as though it had always belonged to her. "Oh, there, Millie," she said, patting Beth's shoulder with the tenderness of a granddaughter. "I'll make you some willow bark tea, and that arthritis pain will ease up soon enough." And then she skipped into the kitchen, humming a cheerful tune, her movements light and assured in a way Beth's had never been. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this tale, be sure to like and subscribe so we know to share more. And if you'd like to hear more stories from Ravenhurst, you can join our mailing list, The Night Keepers, and be the first to receive new tales before they're told anywhere else. Until next time. Stay spooky.